Welcome to the Edge of Greatness podcast. The path to greatness is never linear and requires patience and consistency. Join us on our journey as we peel back the layers of success, searching for that elusive core. Each week we will explore a different component of greatness, utilizing experts who have traveled some part of the path that we are all on. We aim to uncover insights into the areas of leadership, coaching, performance, overcoming failure, the power of habits, and so much more. We are all on the edge of greatness. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Edge of Greatness podcast. I'm your host, Charles Schultz, and today I have with me a very special guest from the Akron, Ohio area, my fellow Ohioan here, Jamy Bechler, former collegiate athlete and coach, author of several titles, including his most recent work, The Bus Trip, The Leadership Playbook, and then also Building Champions, Success Principles from A to Z. Jamy is also the host of Success is a Choice podcast and a member of the John Maxwell leadership team. So a lot of things going on. I appreciate you taking time out of your day to come and join us. So thank you.
Hey, awesome, Charles. Hey, anytime I can be part of any podcast or anything with greatness in it.
There we go.
I'm living vicariously through, if I can get associated with greatness.
Well, I love that. So I was following some of your tweets recently, and obviously being a basketball background, you're probably a huge fan of March Madness and things going on right now. By the time this airs, the tournament will be over, but I'm curious at this particular moment, we're getting into the Elite Eight. How's your bracket looking?
Honestly, I have not looked at my bracket at all. And I'm this guy. I'm the guy that I'm only in one bracket this year. I'm only in one bracket. It's a charity bracket thing where it's for money, to raise money for charity. I went all chalk. I went every single higher seed until the Final Four when I went with Michigan over Baylor in the championship, because I'm a Michigan guy. I grew up in Michigan, even though I live in Ohio now. So I went with every top seed before that. So I have no idea where my bracket's at right now.
So probably not too good at this point.
I'm guessing not. But that was just easier for me. And since I wasn't going to win any money anyways, it's all going to charity. I was like, it's just for pride. So I'm okay with swallowing my pride a little bit if I don't do well as the former basketball guy. But it's great. March Madness is like the best time of the year. My wife always rolls her eyes at me because it's like the best holiday. You just plop yourself down on the couch and watch games all day long and all night long. So it's like the best holiday.
Yeah. I didn't realize how much I missed it from last year to this year until it was gone for a year, and now it's back. And I'm like, you know what? This is absolutely my favorite time of year. Like, I love bowl season. I love when the playoffs come around for other sports, but there's nothing quite like you said, all day, just basketball.
Yeah. I love football. I probably like watching football more than watching basketball, even though I was a basketball coach. But bowl season is like, it's fun. It's great to watch these bowl games, but the motivation for every team is it's such a wide spectrum. You have no idea. Like, if you're trying to pick the games, like, there's upsets that happen in March Madness, obviously. But and this year's a little different because of the COVID. There's more upsets than normal. But in a normal year, you're going to have a couple upsets. But for the most part, the better teams are going to win. In the bowl games, man, you don't have any idea the motivation or what these kids are thinking or what they're doing. I mean, they just might like these goodie bags and just like the vacation, or they're already thinking about, becoming a pro or whatever. So those bowl games are fun to watch. There can be a lot of madness and craziness, but they're really hard to predict.
Yeah, you're not really getting the same product that you get throughout the year in most cases. So one of the things I want to know is, so when we're thinking about like the March Madness stuff and you're talking about upsets and you see those types of things happening, what is it in your mind that makes up some of those teams that become those Cinderella stories? What's the difference maker? Because obviously when you look at the teams, there's usually a wide spread as far as talent, obviously the depth of talent, especially at the bigger schools, but you get these smaller schools that make an impact every year. There's always at least one or two. Is there something in your mind that stands out about what makes those teams what they are and how they have those moments?
So do you want me to give you my Kenny Smith, Charles Barkley TNT approach? Like, you got to have good guard play. You got to make those free throws down the stretch. You got to take care of the ball, and you got to have some experience. Yeah. They have no idea who these teams are, and they'll,
right.
they'll give those 4 or 5 things and it's like, okay, yeah, whatever. No, but seriously, obviously every team in the tournament is good. Every team
Mhm.
has some talent. But what you're really looking for are, who are those teams that do have some leaders? Who are those teams that have the people that have maybe some charisma, or they I know this gets overblown, or it's a cliche, but who are the teams that have teamwork, that have chemistry, that get along, and you very rarely see a Cinderella with a bunch of freshmen win. Most of the time, the Cinderellas are the seniors or juniors, the upperclassmen that have been there, that have been through the wars, that have handled adversity, and that have a strong belief not only in their abilities, because these freshmen nowadays, I mean, people are coming into, no matter what level they're coming into, they're coming in with probably more belief than ever before in their own abilities, but the belief in each other. So do I have a belief in Charles, and does Charles have a belief in Jamy? And that only comes with some experience, where some good experience, where you've celebrated successes together, you've overcome obstacles together, overcome challenges together, you've won and lost together. And that doesn't happen as freshmen most of the time. And so a lot of time, if you're, let's say, Kentucky or Duke, and that's bad for this year because they were nobodies this year, but in a normal year, maybe you have a bunch of stud freshmen at those Power 5 schools. They can go a long way and win without that belief in each other because their talent is so superior. But if you're an underdog, your talent isn't superior to the Kentuckys and the Dukes and the Virginias each year. And so you have to have a belief in each other, and you have to have gone through the rigors and have that experience in a good way. Not all, experience is good. Sometimes, as a coach, I dealt with 4th-year freshmen, so just because you're a senior doesn't mean that you're going to be a great leader. So you have to have developed and learned during those years, but you probably don't get to the NCAA tournament if you have a bunch of 4th-year freshmen on your team. If you have a bunch of seniors that have never learned, then you're not getting to the tournament to begin with. So that's kind of a long-winded question to say they have to believe in one another and they have to actually be a team. Now they're probably going to have a star. They're probably going to have some dude that knocks down 35, and goes off, but the whole team believes in that dude. The whole team, they're setting screens, they're going in headhunting, they're playing defense, they're doing all the things necessary so that guy can be a star.
Yeah, no, I was actually just having this conversation the other day about the one and done for the big programs makes it possible for these smaller programs to knock them off on this big stage because there isn't necessarily the same cultural drive. I mean, obviously they have a culture at those big programs, otherwise you're not consistently successful, but that team-based culture is probably a little bit of a different dynamic. Would you agree that there's more time to build that camaraderie and that group environment when you have kids who are constantly going into their 4th and 5th year before they move on instead of leaving every 1 or 2 years?
Yeah, 100%, Charles. And I mean, if all else is equal, I'd rather have talent. I'd rather have Zion Williamson than, Joe Blow. I'd rather have that stud on my team. But we see this all the time. We see these studs sometimes get beat by these more mature teams because they know how to handle pressure. They know how to handle, they've been involved in these championship games. Now they're not at the national level, but in their conference tournament, think about some of these teams. Like, think about UMBC, Baltimore County, a couple of years ago when they beat Virginia. How many big games that they've been involved in through the years because their conference only gets one team in. Every game is do or die. And it doesn't matter how good they are during the year. If they lose, if they're the best team in their conference, but they lose in the semis, or they lose in the quarters or even the finals, they're not getting in. And so these guys have been through the ringers. They've had to step up to the plate in pressure packed situations. They do have talent. They're not as talented as a Zion Williamson, but
Right.
they do have talent. And so you put that together with the talent, with the intangibles, the lesser talent with the big time intangibles. And that's where you see these upsets occur. And that's the same way, if you're in a corporation, a business or a school, and you're hiring somebody, are you hiring just the person with the flashy resume? Or are you hiring people that have good soft skills, that can adjust and handle adversity, that can wear multiple hats, juggle multiple balls at the same time, And so that's the thing, and, you got a great team. What if one kid fouls out? Now all of a sudden, and I know today's kid can play a lot of different positions, but they're used to playing certain roles, or they're, I'm the stud, or I'm the guy, I'm this position. And I know, once again, they're multi-talented, can play different positions, but you go to a smaller level, like even where you went, Youngstown State, they're not getting the 5-star athletes. They're getting kids that aren't 5-star athletes, obviously. And sometimes those guys are used to playing multiple positions because they're playing out of position. They're not, it's like, it's probably more so in football than basketball, but basketball can be a positionless game. But you get guys that are 6'5", they might have played post their whole career in high school. And now at Youngstown State or at this mid-major, they're having to play shooting guard.
Right.
Where if you're at Duke and you're 6'8", then you've always been, if you're, well, it doesn't even matter how tall you are at Duke or at Kentucky or Virginia, you've been a stud your whole career. And so it doesn't matter if you're 6'8" and you've been a point guard. You were a point guard in 9th grade because everybody knew you were better than everybody else, and just give him the ball and get out of the way. And so if you foul out, let's say, now all of a sudden, oh, well, what do we do? I've always played this position, or that kind of stuff, where,
right.
And we're kind of getting, I'm getting too deep in the weeds, but at a mid-major, they're used to adversity. They're used to having to adjust. They're used to having to adapt to situations that come their way. They're also used to having chips on their shoulder and fighting a little bit more than these prima donna athletes sometimes.
Oh yeah, no, I totally agree with that. There's definitely a desire to push the limit of what you're capable of against those bigger teams, to prove yourself and have that national stage presence, because you don't get that all the time. So to build off of that, kind of to come back to what you were talking about, is they have that constant pressure to compete and to succeed and to win games. Do you feel like that helps with developing leadership over the course of a career, when you're constantly under that, I guess, the microscope of success, where there's not as much room for failure, that you learn to grow from those environments as a leader? Does that help?
Yeah, I think without a doubt, because a lot of times failure is part of the learning process. Failure is part of success. And that seems like such a paradox, but I've never seen, I can't think of off the top of my head somebody that's been successful that's never had failure. I mean, even you take, and I mean, this is getting to be older school as we go along, but Michael Jordan,
right.
I mean, the dudes playing now have never weren't even alive when Jordan was playing, so Jordan's getting older, but even Jordan experienced failure with not making his varsity team as a sophomore. We've all heard about that, but also, what, the first 7 years of his career, they didn't do anything with the Bulls. They were constantly coming up short. So he was experiencing success where he was the poster child, literally the poster child, for basketball. He's on every poster. He's winning the dunk contest. He's the leading scorer, but his team isn't winning. That failure, understanding, hey, I'm holding my team back. Wait, what? How are you holding your team back? You're the leading scorer. I'm not shooting any threes. Number one, I'm not shooting them. And number two, I'm not making them when I do shoot them. And it corresponded exactly when he worked on his 3-point game and started taking more shots and started making more, the Bulls ended up winning. So I can't think of anybody off the top of my head that's been successful in life that hasn't had failure at some point that springboarded them. So even though it's a paradox, I think you have to have failure, or at the very least challenges and obstacles that you overcome. And the more you've been handed stuff to you in life, the harder it's going to be to overcome challenges, because you're not used to getting down in the mud. You're not used to really grinding. And, every kid in America, on their Instagram, man, grinding it out, man, woke up, man, I'm in the gym 6 o'clock in the morning, grinding, grind life, or #grind. It's like, dude, everybody's in the gym at 6. It's just The other people aren't tweeting or Instagramming about it because they're actually working. Get over yourself. It's not a big deal to be grinding like that,
All right. I mean, if you want to be successful, you have to.
That's what you have to do, but some of these people aren't used to grinding out when things go bad, when things aren't the way they want it to be. And basketball players are even worse than, you were a baseball player. Yeah. I mean, the cliche, it's faulty, but even the best baseball players in the world fail 70% of the time. That's not true.
Right.
But from a batting average standpoint, it's kind of simpler to say that. But in baseball, you do have a lot more failure, and you do have a lot more, hey, I've got to stick to the process. I've got to work things. I've got to work through this. It's not always going to come natural. Basketball, sometimes they expect everything to come naturally to them, and they expect everything, every referee's call should go, in their favor. Everything should be fine. And it's like, if you want to be the best, you're going to have to overcome some challenges once in a while.
Yeah, no, I totally agree that baseball set me up for a more level-headed acceptance of failure because of my experience dealing with that. And I find that those moments where I was struggling has led me to more success doing other things, because life is tough. You're going to face those struggles. One of the things I want to kind of piggyback on with this is, you talked about these kids that end up going to these big schools. They're successful. They're not used to failure. Is there something you would do to help them start to realize that as you move up levels, as you go higher into life, you're going to face more people kind of like yourself, which is going to lead to tougher environments and failure moments and things of that nature?
Yeah, great question. And I think it starts at the lower levels. Actually, I think more coaches, and this is tough to do. This is tough to get an AAU coach of a bunch of 15-year-olds to hold those 15-year-olds accountable for their process, for their work habits, for their daily, how they go about their daily business. Because most of them is just roll the balls out and, hey, I got the most talented kid. Or junior high. I mean, how many junior high coaches out there? And yeah, I'm hating on junior high coaches in general. If you have a stud, you give him the ball and let him be the point guard, but you're not developing his skills. You're not developing teamwork. You're not developing, what does he do when he doesn't have the ball? What do these other kids do? You're just giving the ball to the best player and letting them go at it. And then you win games. You go 12-2 on the year and everybody thinks you're a great coach. And it's like, but then they get to high school and maybe this stud doesn't grow anymore. And all of a sudden the high school team is 12-12. I've seen this happen time and time again. There's a great junior high team. Year after year, the junior high team might be good, and then the high school team's bad. And then people are like, well, the high school coach is bad. It's like, yeah, but the junior high coach never developed those kids. So that's a long way of saying, I think sometimes if you really care about kids developing into better basketball players or better baseball players or better human beings, better leaders, it starts earlier, where you get this kid. All right, Charles is this great prodigy. Okay, but I want to help Charles understand talent is not enough. Talent alone is only a starting point. It's not the end all be all. Talent doesn't equal good. And a lot of times we see this. Kids have a lot of talent and they think, I'm good. I've arrived. No. All it is your mom and dad were great athletes, and the gene biology wise, you're a good athlete because of genes, not because of anything you did. You're not 6'7" and chiseled because you did anything. Maybe you've never even hit the weight room, and you can jump higher and run faster than somebody else because of genetics or because of biology or that kind of stuff. And that's not to say people don't work, but you have to get them working hard and understanding their daily habits when they're young is going to move with them. And those habits are going to develop into where now, not only do I have talent, but now I'm starting to be good. And so when other people catch up to me, when I go to a higher level of college or when I get into the pros, now all of a sudden I have those habits that I can still say, you know what, I'm still going to be better than these people because I'm going to outwork them. I've worked with some professional athletes and, definitely high level athletes like you've worked with and, but I've worked with a couple professional basketball players, and it's interesting to see when they go from college to the pro level. It's the first time they've ever had to sit, like during a timeout. During a timeout, the coaches are talking and they're sitting. They're not having to listen to the coach because they're not playing. What do I do in a timeout? This is the first time. In the past, the only time they weren't playing was if it was a blowout or they were in foul trouble. Now the coach is choosing them not to play. What do I do? How do I act like a teammate? They don't understand that I don't need to show the coach I can score 20 points. I need to show the coach that I can be a good teammate. Or, in the NBA, the 15th man on an NBA roster doesn't need to be able to score 20 points a game. That 15th man needs to be able to wave a towel really well and be a great teammate and be ready for their opportunity, play great defense, hit the open shot when they have the opportunity. But they don't need to create their own shot and be the man. They need to be low maintenance and high energy. And some of these kids, if all they're used to is talent, and I'm getting by on my talent, then they don't know how to actually be a good player one day when it matters and a good teammate.
No, I love that, because I think talent is just a head start. It's you got to jump on the 100-meter dash. You got out first, but eventually they're going to get up to their full speed. And if you're not continuously building upon your start, you're eventually going to get caught. And I find it interesting about the thought of, when you make it up each level, obviously you're moving up in talent, but as a player who goes from being the star in college to then sitting the bench in the pros, which if you're not a first round draft pick and you end up getting picked up by a team, that's probably what you're going to be, right? You're going to be taking your lumps and waiting your turn. How you manage that. And from a coach perspective, your point of waving a towel made me think of the upset of it was earlier this year. Who played? It was a big one. It was a 13 over or 14 over a 3. And they showed the bench, and the bench was just, everybody's up waving a towel. Everyone's rowdy, jumping around. It was I wish I could. I think it was whoever beat Texas. It was a late night game.
Abilene Christian.
That one. Yeah. And that's what I'm thinking of, is like, those guys get it. And that's why you have a successful moment like that, is you have good teammates who in practice push their starters, in practice push their teammates and hold each other accountable. At least you assume so. If they're into that game without being a part of the game, you have to be a good teammate at that point.
Yeah, but it starts with coaches understanding that, and emphasizing their culture is one of teamwork. Their culture is one that we're in this together, not, Charles is the star and yeah, he hit that shot, so, we won. And, it's like early on, and that's where I say with AAU coaches or junior high coaches or whatever, if you're just enamored with talent, then you're never going to teach those teamwork things. If it's like, I don't care what the bench does, because the bench doesn't matter, because Charles is a stud and he's going 1-on-5 and he's still scoring, so to speak. And I'm exaggerating, but we get into that vicious cycle, and then we don't teach things, or we might say team, but our actions betray us. And so I think a lot of times as coaches, we're not doing what we're saying. And then it eventually bites us in the backside, because we do eventually go up against somebody that's better than us, or somebody that has more stars than we do. And then we'll blame the referees, or we'll blame something else, instead of, what, from day one, we didn't create a culture of team. And almost every sport that you will coach, there's a team aspect. There's a huge team aspect. Even I've worked with golfers and know even professional golfers. You watch professional golf, PGA. I mean, they'll talk about their caddies. Those golfers, if you watch them, they don't hit a shot without consulting with their caddies. Right. They're a team. It might only be a 2-person team. And then their swing coach is a 3-person team, and their agent's 4, but they might have 4 or 5 people around them, but they're a team, and they can't operate without that team still. So even an individual sport has a team component. And we need each other, and that stud on that team needs each other. Abilene Christian, I can't tell you who their best player is.
No,
I don't know who their leading scorer is, but I know they beat Texas, and I know Texas coach left after that. But I mean, here's this team that nobody knows anything about, but I do know that they broke most people's brackets, and they beat Texas, and they moved on. Abilene Christian, the name on the front of the jersey.
Right. No, yeah. And I love that, because, you look at them and then you look at like Oral Roberts, and those are the teams this year that are standing out as one, the bracket busters. But if you look at the way they play, there's a level of trust within those teams. I watched Oral Roberts a few times because I'm a Buckeye fan. So I watched him smoke my team right out the gates. And I was like, you know what? Now that I'm not mad that my team's losing, let's watch them again, see how they look. And they beat Florida. I'm like, I kind of like this team. They're fun to watch. But speaking of the teamwork piece of it, do you feel like the amount of AAU and travel sports and all of this other stuff is actually becoming a detriment to growing teams and leadership and setting kids up for failure?
In a way, yes. And it's easy to pile on to AAU
Right.
Just like it's easy to pile on to the NCAA. The NCAA can do no good, in most people's mind. They're an easy target. Now they shoot themselves in the foot with stupid things, that they don't
Right.
think about. They're tone deaf about some things. But the same way with AAU, it's easy to pile on. Though I do think there's a huge place for that in the sport because they do give kids opportunities to play. And it's even as much as I criticize AAU coaching sometimes, they are in an awful bind because if they don't give in to the parents, AAU is even more than high school or college where they have to listen to the parents because the parents are paying money in a lot of cases for their kid to play on this team.
Right.
And so it's this vicious, system that doesn't allow coaches to do the right thing. But I'm not sure all the coaches would want to do the right thing, even if they had no pressure.
Right.
I think ultimately as leaders, when we're in a position of leadership, we should be doing everything we can to develop people. I think that, developing skills or giving people the ball, to score is nice, but developing people, how can I develop Charles so that he's prepared for whether he has the ball or doesn't have the ball, for whether he's playing basketball or not playing basketball, whether he's being successful or not being successful. I need to prepare him for all these things that he's going to face in life because, and I'm biased. I talk about leadership and culture all the time. I see things through that framework, but we're developing players. We're developing future college players, maybe, but man, we're developing future husbands and wives and fathers and mothers and community members and business people and educators and coaches in our community. And I know that gets like deep and it's like, all right, let's sit around a campfire and sing Kumbaya. I mean, come on, Jamie, that's too deep, but it's like, just look at the last presidential election and how people are not civil with one another and how people, are losing friends and neighbors because they can't interact with one another. They can't handle when things don't go their way. And it's like, okay, but let's do something about that. Maybe we can't do everything, but we can do something. And I know that gets really deep and it's like, well, come on, we're dealing with seventh graders on an AAU team. Yeah, but seventh graders become adults. Seventh
Right.
graders become, employees and coworkers, and they interact with people. Let's raise up a new generation of good leaders. And I know once again that gets deep, but to bring it back to sports, if you have a kid who's a better leader and a better character kid and who gets along with people better, they're probably going to be a better athlete. They're probably going to pass the ball when they need to. And they're probably going to high five that teammate when they got that rebound or they scored, even though it wasn't me scoring. And then all of a sudden now the whole team starts to get that energy in it. Going back to the Abilene Christian, now you have a whole bunch of dudes just loving the success of their teammates, even though they're not having the success. But man, great teams have great teammates. And that's what you saw with Abilene Christian. So if we're developing those soft skills, because people don't just pop out of the womb and they're a great teammate. They're not just a great leader, of people. They're not a person of influence just because, they were born a certain way necessarily. They have to still develop some of those things. They have to develop how they're going to interact with people. And if we can help them with that, man, our teams will be better. Our teams will be better.
Yeah, no, I'm on board with that 100% because no matter how many teams you look at or how many teams your kids play for or whatever else, when you look at that team, a handful are going to play in college. 0.5% of those kids might ever make it to the pro game, but they're all going to become people out in the world. They're all going to become adults. They're all going to become people who work in the workforce, who lead other people at some point. And if I'm a owner of a business and I'm got an opportunity to interview a kid and the kid just happened to be playing for Abilene Christian and he said, yeah, I went to school here and I was on that team. And I was like, oh, I know for sure you're somebody I want, without ever talking to you, because that whole team was in it for them, for the team, not for themselves. You could tell by the way they carried it. It was all about each other. And that's a huge piece of growth in our community, like you said, because we can't even have civil discord about differing beliefs anymore because we don't have the ability to communicate and be fair and have open communication and accept differences. And leadership is ability to do that and then inspire others to kind of see from different perspectives and come together.
And I think, the industries that we're in, the sports industry, the athletics industry, man, I'm biased, but I think it's one of the best industries to be in to grow, to raise up the next generation of leaders, because when you're dealing with sports, fitness, athletics, man, every single, I mean, hundreds to thousands of times a day, you have opportunities to grow as a person, to handle adversity, to handle things that come up that aren't, you don't get your way, that aren't going to, I mean, just the mere fact of conditioning. I mean, that us against our bodies, us against conditioning drills,
Yeah.
that's a losing battle most of the time. We have to battle ourselves to keep going because we're not getting our way. Our way is to sit over there and drink some, drink with a umbrella in it, or, go get some Gatorade, or just to take a break. That's what we want.
Right.
But that's not how you get better as an athlete. But you constantly having to fight those battles within yourself. Just like, when you don't want to get out of bed in the morning to go to work, or your car has a flat tire and it's, you live in Ohio in December, and it's 10 degrees outside and you got to change that flat tire because you didn't want to pay that monthly, AAA cost or whatever.
Right.
Now, all those kinds of things, you're better prepared for those kinds of things as an athlete if you've managed to work through those as an athlete. And every day you have opportunities to practice to be an adult, practice for when it really matters.
Yeah.
I just think what you're doing, what coaches do all across the country with their teams, I think we're missing the boat because we don't focus on that, because we think that, well, that doesn't help our team, but it does help your team. It definitely helps your team because you're going to face adversity all the time. You're going to deal with people all the time. You're going to deal with egos, friends. You and I might be best friends on a team, but that doesn't mean we're going to share the ball with one another. It doesn't mean that we're going to help each other as good. We can be best friends and not good teammates because we have different agendas going on, but we can be best buds and go play Madden afterwards, in our dorm rooms or whatever. But on the court, we're not good teammates. Or maybe we're good teammates for each other, but we're not good teammates for the other 12 guys on the team.
Oh yeah.
And so those are things that I think coaches miss the boat on, that I think would help their teams, even if they spend a little bit more time on that than rolling the balls out and going, all right, we're going to spend 10 more minutes scrimmaging or 10 more minutes on free throws.
Right.
It's like, work on some of that stuff and call people on the carpet, remind people of the standards on the team, hold them accountable for if their actions are not good, but then praise them, acknowledge them when they do things that are awesome for your culture.
Yeah, no, I've seen it a couple of times too, from coaches look at that. It's like, I only have so much time to do this, and leadership and culture is like the last thing on my plate. But the long run is when you build that right culture, the kids that you worked with when they were sophomore, junior, senior, and they go off to college, they come back and then they filter down and they teach the younger kids. And all of a sudden your program just blows up because now you have people upon people upon people upon people who are leaders coming back and teaching them the right ways. And now all of a sudden every year you're fighting for conference and district titles and state titles.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. Yeah. I mean, we could go on and on, cause I love sports, and I love I love sports just from a competitive standpoint, but I love the lessons that can be taught and the opportunities we have. And I just think sometimes coaches are missing the boat on that. And I was a coach, so it's not like I was a good coach. I was a bad coach. I coach big programs. I coach small programs where I'm driving a 15 passenger van after a loss and the players are making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches in the back. I've been coach of the year. I've been fired. I've seen different aspects of coaching. So this isn't me, being a professor or being someone that's never done it before, just, preaching to coaches. I've been there, and I know that some of the best teams I've ever had on the court were also some of the ones that had the best leadership. And the ones that didn't do well were normally the ones that we struggled with our leadership, struggled with character, got technical fouls all the time. Players were at each other's throats, or there were so many agendas going on. And I think all these soft skills get overlooked way too often because, one, they're hard to teach.
Yeah.
It's harder to do that. It takes more effort from a coach, but we sometimes don't connect the dots that if I can have if Charles can be a better teammate, all of a sudden Charles is going to be a better member of our team. and our whole team is going to be better. And then I'm going to bang my head against the wall less, when I go out to Waffle House or IHOP at midnight, and talk to my assistant coaches. I'm going to bang my head against the wall less because we have better teammates. But the same thing could translate into business.
Yeah.
In business, it's the same thing. Your culture that you develop as the leader, build up better teammates in your business. It's not just salespeople and the billing department are two separate entities and it doesn't matter what they're doing. Well, if billing's not doing their job, that's going to affect sales. And definitely if sales don't do their job, billing will have nothing to do. And then you'll have to let go of some people.
Right.
But I mean, every department matters, and do you have superstar salesmen? Well, you might have a superstar salesman, but are they helping others? Are they mentoring? Are they making the other people in that business better? And that's what it comes down to. Great teams have great teammates, and great teammates are going to build each other up. I love this quote I love the thought of success is becoming the best you're capable of becoming, but significance is helping others be successful. So significance is helping others be the best that they can become. And oftentimes, first of all, it's hard for us to be successful. It's hard for us to maximize our potential and be what we're capable of being. But then it's definitely hard for Charles be the best he can be, because I'm worried about myself.
Right. No, I love that quote. That's awesome.
But yeah, how can you make others better?
Yeah. And I feel like as I've gotten older, that's a more important question than my success is how many others can I help? What kind of impact can I have on somebody else's life? So going forward from this, to build off of kind of what we were talking about as far as building that leadership within the team, is there a tip or a place you'd want if somebody is out there listening? I got a bunch of coaches I know that listen to this, and let's say they want to make a change in their leadership. Is there a place you'd have them start? Is there something you would have them begin with?
First off is the perspective of understanding that if they want to be a great leader, then they're going to have to work at that. It's not because of their business card or what it says on their door or their title. The positional leadership is just like talent. It's just a starting point. If you really want to make an impact on the people around you, look at leadership as influence. Look at it as it's not about a position or a title. It's about influence. And how can I influence people in a positive way? How can I get them from where they are now to where they want to be? And to do that, they have to know, like, and trust you. They have to buy what you're selling. So whatever that is you're selling, it might be you got to touch the line during sprints. You've got to, at baseball, you've got to run out every ground ball, even if you're going to be thrown out, even if it's obvious. You have to get them to buy what you're selling. And they're not going to do that if they don't trust you, if they don't like you, if they don't know you. And so you have to really connect with them. So as a leader, you have to look at it as, I'm going to have a positive influence because I'm going to make a connection with them. And it's not about me being way up here on this pedestal. And that's what too many of us as head coaches or positional leaders do. We think we're on this pedestal, and our goal is to have compliant followers. Man, why can't Charles just do what I tell him to do? Our team needs to do what they're supposed to do. Okay. Yeah, I guess obviously you want that, but our goal as a real leader, as a true leader, shouldn't be to have compliant followers. It should be to develop other leaders. Man, if I have a basketball team, I would much rather have 15 leaders on that team than 15 followers who just hang on my every word. I mean, that's great, but what happens when I'm not saying something? What happens when I'm not instructing them? Now you have a bunch of people hanging around waiting for instructions. They don't know what to do. They haven't taken ownership in the program. They're not invested in the program. They're just waiting to be yes, sir, no, sir, which is great. You want that more than, screw you type stuff. But don't have your goal be to have compliant followers. And that's what too many of us as leaders want. We want just good followers. Just do what I tell you to do. Develop other leaders, empower them, give them ownership, let them be invested in the process.
Yeah. When I think about that, I think about the fact that if you only have followers, then they're not putting in extra work because there's no leadership involved, because you need a leader to say, hey guys, come with me. I'm going to get a shoot around or extra shoot around. I'm going to do an extra session in the weight room. That doesn't happen if it's not on the books scheduled by the coach, if you have a bunch of followers. But
Absolutely.
Yeah. As soon as you have the leadership piece connected, then all of a sudden now John will go do his thing. Jamie will go do his thing. He'll drag other people with him. We're going to bring people along. We're going to have more people doing other stuff outside of practice because the leadership is pulling them to do more.
Yeah. And that's what you want, because you're not, as a leader, always going to be around. There's going to be times. I mean, I wrote the book, The Bus Trip, and that's a big part of the bus trip is there's going to be a lot of times where the coach or even the captains aren't around. The two dudes in the back of the bus talking, how is leadership manifesting itself there, or at the rest area, or the truck stop, or at the restaurant, or in the locker room, or, on the drive home, the cafeteria, whatever it is, the locker room. There's going to be issues that come up. There's going to be situations. There's going to be metaphorical fires in the locker room, let's say, or in the back of the bus. Hopefully it's a metaphorical fire,
Yeah,
not a real fire.
Right.
But, do your players have fire extinguishers, or do they have lighter fluid? Are they going to put out that fire, or are they going to make it bigger? And too oftentimes our teams, we haven't done a good job as coaches of equipping our players with fire extinguishers, or equipping our employees, if we're a principal, we haven't equipped our teachers with fire extinguishers,
Right.
And so they either allow that fire to get bigger, or worse, they have lighter fluid and they make it worse.
Right.
And so we have to do a better job as leaders of developing other leaders so that they can do the work for us. It's that multiplication, or we multiply ourselves. We multiply that influence out there, the ripple effect. And man, there's been times where my best friend, as a player, my best friend was the water cooler and the athletic trainer, so to speak. I wasn't playing, but you know what? There was still somebody on that team that was a friend of mine, and we could influence one another. And it might just be, hey, we're down there next to that Gatorade cooler, me and Charles are down there. We're not playing at all, but you know what? We can make sure that each other doesn't have a bad attitude. We can remind each other to stand up and clap. We can remind each other to wave that towel. We can keep reminding each other to do what we're supposed to do to be good teammates. And then maybe that spreads to these other players on the team. So we're always going to have an influence over somebody, even in a company, or in a school. Two teachers are talking around the water cooler, or at the break room, or whatever. You can choose to criticize your principal, or choose to say kids these days, they're idiots, or they're fill in the blank. Or you can choose to remind each other of why you got into teaching, or, hey, I did this today, and you'll never believe Charles paid attention. Charles stopped, put his phone down, and he actually paid attention. That was amazing. I might try this again tomorrow, or this encourages me for the next day. You can encourage each other. You can remind each other of how we can be better. But if you're the positional leader and you're never equipping your people to think like that, then you're not going to get that. And so your culture is going to end up not being the culture that you would like.
Oh, yeah, I totally agree with that. And so one of the things I want to circle back to is you talked about connecting as a leader and opening yourself up. And with that, I always think of like vulnerability and empathy. And those two words to me make for a leader that you can trust, because they're willing to open up about some shortcomings, open up about their failures, be true and authentic when they deliver stuff. Do you feel like those are two pieces that a lot of times, because you take a positional approach, you don't allow yourself to expose some of those pieces?
Yeah, it's kind of like it's kind of like a chicken and the egg situation, which comes first, because when you're in a position of leadership, you don't want to be vulnerable and transparent if the people around you are going to take advantage of that.
Right.
And the way that they're going to take advantage of that is if you haven't connected with them. But then the way to connect with them is to be transparent and vulnerable. So here's where I'm going with that. It has to be more individual. It has to be on a lower level, on a smaller level. You can't, as the leader, too often apologize, too often be vulnerable, be transparent in a group setting, unless that whole group has bought into what you're selling. You're connected with them, because you're eventually, what's going to happen is people are going to start talking. The people that don't buy into you, they're going to start talking, and it's going to infect maybe those middle people. And before you know it, you're going to have some issues, some situations on your hand that you're going to have to deal with. So you want to build that connection one-on-one. as much as possible. So it's going to take a little extra time and effort. But let's say as a basketball coach, let's say I do this with everybody, but you could do this no matter what your job is, what your industry is. But as a basketball coach, one thing that I did was, let's say we have 15 players, we have 5 days of practice. I'm going to take 3 guys every day, and I'm going to touch base with them right before practice, really informally, but I'm going to try to melt the ice with them. I'm going to break the ice with them. So if they don't like me, this is going to be a way to where they can stomach me or tolerate me after a while. If they do like me, then maybe we develop even a better relationship. But so Charles is shooting free throws over at the side. I'm going to walk over and be like, I don't know. Big Drake fan. Okay. I don't know. You're a big Drake fan. And I'll be like, hey, Charles, you see Drake's coming to Columbus? Drake's coming to Columbus this summer. You think you can get tickets? Yeah, I think so. You want to go, coach? No, man, that's not for me. But that'll be fun, won't it? Have you ever seen Drake before? No, coach, I've never, I listen to all of his music. Okay, great. Man, and while you're talking, it's like a minute conversation. He's shooting his free throws, you're rebounding for him. And then at the end of that minute, instead of being like, all right, now I got to go over here and talk to Jalen because it's his turn, you just say, man, I like your stroke. You're stroking the ball really well today. I think today's going to be a good practice, man. Keep it up. And then you just walk away and you go over to Jalen, and Jalen might be shooting free throws, or Jalen might be tying his shoe. And you talk about the Patriots, or you talk about, Tom Brady, or you talk about whatever, whatever's a big deal to him. And you've already decided that day, those 3 people you're going to touch and what you're going to talk to them about. And it's very informal. It's very non-threatening. And that's the kind of one-on-one stuff that if you look at it from a long game perspective, not that I have to make Charles like me in a week. I'm going to try to break the ice, and it's a continuum. It's not Charles likes me or doesn't like me, but I'm going to get him from he doesn't like me to he likes me a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more, or he hates me less and less and less. But you can do that in any company that you're in, and you start working on people one-on-one. Now, a lot of people will say, well, I have these individual meetings. I have one-on-one meetings. Yeah, but it's like going to the principal's office,
Right.
Or even if it's not like a negative thing, I call, Charles comes into my office as the player. Well, Charles knows that this is his scheduled time. Mm-hmm. Well, coach is doing this with everybody. Yeah, coach, coach has to do this. Coach is going to ask me stuff. He's going to try to act like he cares. There's still, even if it's not a negative, it still can turn out to be a negative if we don't have a good relationship. So these little touch points are these little things where you melt the ice. If Charles is my baseball player, but he also plays football, man, I can go to these football games. Now there's nothing between Charles and I where there's playing time involved, or I'm criticizing him, or I'm making him run. It's just, hey, Charles, that was a great game. Hey, that route that you ran as a wide receiver, that route you ran was awesome, or, whatever. And you just break the ice slowly but surely. And you could do the same thing with parents. But employees, if you have employers that are listening to this, you can do the same thing with employees. Yeah. Just find ways to break the ice and make that connection.
And I like the connection happening outside the office. There's always a place for the office meeting, because you want to have those X's and O's or important scheduled meetings that cover certain topics. But that, like you said, that emotional, in-person, like off to the side, not threatening conversation is the one that they're going to remember from a relationship building perspective. Then coach in my office today said I'm doing really well. Well, he probably told everyone in his office that they're doing really well. Yep. Right. But when you're shooting free throws and doing stuff off to the side and you're told, man, you're doing great today, it feels more authentic. Even if it's the same presentation of the words, it's in a different setting and you take it a different way.
Absolutely. And now you need both of those though.
Oh, yeah,
I don't say you still got to have that structured time. You still have to be intentional. Because the more you can touch base with people, the better off, the more opportunity you have, even if it's just where you're listening, where Charles comes in for his weekly meeting to the principal's office, so to speak. but maybe I just get him talking. I don't tell him what I think. I don't tell him what he needs to think. I just ask him some questions and get him talking more and more. So you can make your meetings a little bit less threatening, or make your meetings a little bit more fun, or have your meetings in a common area. You're sitting on one nice, recliner or a nice chair in the lobby, and I'm sitting in another chair in the lobby. and we're just going to kind of talk about some cool stuff or, whatever. You get out of that environment once in a while, but yeah, whatever you can do to connect, and then you keep doing it. Don't be like, oh, it didn't work. It didn't work. He was still a jerk to me. Well, yeah, it takes a while, look at it as the long game, it's a process.
Right. Well, I don't want to take too much more of your time. I know I could talk to you probably for another couple hours and we just have a good time here, but what I want to do now is give my listeners an opportunity to connect with you. Are there social media avenues or emails or things that you want to throw out there, a website that we can put in the show notes so that they can connect with you and kind of see what you've been doing and what you're up to?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Twitter, if they're a twit, if you have some twits that are listening to you, Twitter is the social media that I connect with the most, and that's at Coach Bechler, and they can find stuff about my books, but they can find stuff about my podcast, Success is a Choice, but also coachbechler.com is my website, same stuff there. But yeah, my DMs are open. So at Twitter, they can hit me up. Same with Instagram at Coach Bechler, they can hit me up. And there's a way to get me at my at coachbechler.com. So they can pretty much find me, Google me, and
there you go.
And I get back to people pretty quickly, or at least I try to.
No, you did great with me. I was very surprised. I was reaching out. I was like, you know what? I got a few people I've been wanting to get on the show and send out a few messages. And all of a sudden, like, I would say it was within 15, 20 minutes. I was like, oh, well, look at that. Here we go. Let's do this. So
that might be unhealthy on my part too, but yeah, I try to answer messages as quickly as possible.
No. Well, I greatly appreciate you taking time to come on the show. As always, guys, keep reaching for the stars. Remember, whenever we fall, always get up. Thank you for joining us today on the Edge of Greatness podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and join us again next time as we continue to dig deeper into the key components of greatness. The path to greatness is never linear, so remember to keep pursuing greatness no matter what. Keep stretching your abilities, reach for the stars, and fall flat on your face. But no matter what happens, remember, whenever we fall, always get up. Until next time, I'm Charles Schultz, and this was the Edge of Greatness podcast. Thank you for listening to today's episode. Please take a moment now to subscribe, rate, and review our show. We are all on the edge of greatness.